Welcome to Breaking Financial Chains, where we combine practical money guidance with emotional healing to help you break free from financial limitations. I'm Tanya Riverson, your financial wingwoman.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Financial Chains, my podcast. My name's Tanya Ibbison, and I'm going to chat to you today about breaking the high income, high spend cycle. So, a big mix of the clients that I work with. Some of them are people that earn money and want to make some changes with the way that they manage their money or with what their longer term plans are with that money. And some of those people are individuals that perhaps don't have quite so much money or are in financially controlling or abusive relationships. So the emphasis this week is going to be on breaking that high income cycle that so many people can relate to, so many people find themselves in, and the feelings that come from that cycle, that ever expanding cycle of earning more. It's great, I can spend more. But what then? What happens over time if that's the continual pattern that we perpetuate as individuals? Thinking about this in terms of, you might have heard of the phrase the golden handcuffs. So high income, but no freedom. And that's precisely what I'm talking about here. It's something that I feel, certainly from my story, my history, whilst some time ago I ended up in a position to be in a lot of debt, it would be fair to say that some of the circumstances that resulted in that situation were my responsibility. Some of those circumstances and some of those situations resulted from actually, I really quite liked to buy nice things with the money that I did have, certainly to start with, and certainly to get me into that point. I actually quite liked the fact that I had a nice house. And some of that was because we had joint income with my husband at the time. That is what we had, and that was very much the image that he wanted to portray. He wanted to make sure that that was the outside view, two nice cars, nice suit, nice handbag and briefcase and heels and all of that sort of stuff. But when you actually dig under the skin of those situations, of people that are in that position or people that appear to be in that position, it might not always be all sunshine and roses. It might not always be all happiness and smiling behind those four walls. So the golden handcuffs is a really interesting, really clear analogy that links to that actual feeling of being really trapped. While some people look to be successful, the reality of their life is that they are exhausted. They are trapped. They can't make, or they feel they can't make any changes to the lifestyle that they have because we've got these financial commitments. So when we talk about financial chains, sometimes those are chains that are imposed on us by other people. Sometimes those are chains that we create for ourselves. And the ones we create for ourselves are very much the mindset piece. But at the same time, the situations that we can create for ourselves and that very much conjures up the image of financial chains are those financial commitments that we find ourselves in because our lifestyle, the scope of what we spend our money on, starts to creep. We earn a bit more money, so we upgrade the car. We get another pay rise, or we get promoted at work, so we move house and we buy a bigger house. And as our family situation changes and maybe children start to appear on the scene, well, things like school catchment areas become really, really important. So we need to move again. And those houses might be quite pricey because they're in a desirable area because they've got the nice school in that postcode. And that sort of inertia, it's the best way I can use to describe it, because quite often we're not feeling in control of those choices over time. And it might be that we've got external values, or that we feel as a unit, as a family, we want to portray, or we want people to believe that we have. But actually, when was the last time you considered what your own personal values were? Do your personal values align with the family personal values? Do your personal values align with the values of a marriage as a two-person unit? Are they both aligned and going in the same direction? Because what we see happening, or what can quite often happen and feels very, very, um, it feels as though we're very trapped in that situation, is as success grows, things start to get more expensive. We might have a few extra holidays or slightly fancier holidays. And we can highlight that spending. Also, then we could acknowledge that that spending tends to increase and rise without intention. And we've got some keywords that I keep mentioning and we keep bringing up. I'm talking about values and I'm talking about intention. Now, whilst we're merrily bundling along in the life that we expect or that we intend it to look like, we can very often end up doing things that maybe we feel we should do them because of those family pressures or parental pressures or societal pressures or peer group pressures that are put on us, that we feel, well, we don't want to stand out with from the crowd. Actually, we want to be keeping up with those people that we're spending a lot of time with, or we don't want to be disappointing anybody. So it is important that we get married and have children and have a nice house and move to a certain area and have the nice holidays. And I think certainly in some coaching sessions I've had quite recently, where we start to delve into some of those questions. And as I said right at the beginning, so what? So what now? So what happens then? Do you continue to follow on a road that other people dictate for you, that society dictates for you? Or do you get to have some of your own say? When was the last time you actually sat down and considered for yourself, I am really happy with the situation that I am in. I am really happy that the money that comes into our household, our joint accounts, or your personal accounts from a saving point of view, am I really happy with what that money is going towards and what that money is being used, or what purpose is it being put towards? Are your purchases aligned with your values? Are they aligned with your image? Are those two things actually the same as well? Which I think is a really interesting question. Is the image that you want other people to see on the outside the true version of who you are as an individual? And money can be a great tool, right? Money gives us choices. Money gives us the ability to say no to certain things and say yes to other things. Money gives us the ability to not need to wait for an NHS appointment. Money gives us the opportunity to perhaps leave a job where we're starting to feel a little bit compromised. But if we don't know what our personal values are, if we don't know what our longer term financial goals or just goals in general are, how do we know as individuals when any of those boundaries or values are being compromised? So I think the core message that I want to get across in this episode, talking about high income and high spending, is yes, absolutely, it's possible to make those changes. But whilst you might start to be feeling uncomfortable on the inside, and maybe you don't want to say that out loud, if you know what you don't want, do you know or have a good idea of what you do want instead? So if you're wanting to change the direction of the ship, for example, if you're wanting to take back control, maybe break in a few of those financial changes yourself, what are we changing them to? So it's important to start to notice the thoughts, the feelings, the conversations that you find yourself having on repeat with your closest friends, if you're in a fortunate position to be able to do that. But also to start to look a little bit inward and start to notice your own patterns and behaviors. So for example, as we're talking about money, where we have the high income coming into our bank accounts, what is it going out on? What is it that we're buying? So the idea that spending potentially is that linked maybe to emotional fulfillment, for example. So what subscriptions have you got going out of your bank account or that you can review on your Apple Pay app on your phone? when you take your children out shopping, for example, or when you're meeting friends for coffee and you end up having a bit of a browse in some of the local shops, what is your go-to spending of choice likely to be? Are you able to sort of predict what that might be? Do you find yourself just being carried along with what everybody else is doing? Or are you finding yourself perhaps repeating patterns that are trying to tell you something or that you can start to pay attention to in yourself? So, are you purchasing for safety? For example, are you buying things that you've always bought because it makes you feel safe? And that might be buying a certain brand, that might be buying a certain fragrance, for example. Is that something that makes you feel safe, that help you to feel like the same person that you've always been? Are you buying for status? Again, brands features very heavily in that sort of bracket. Are you buying because you're with certain people? And does that buying habit or that buying trend change if you're with a different person? Are you buying out of guilt? Are you buying because somebody is making you feel as though maybe a family member or a friend or a peer that you need to be buying certain items? Or a well-meaning family member is making their opinion known about the items that your children have or the vitamins that they take or the footwear that they wear or whatever that might be. I know, for example, when I go shopping with my daughter and I make a nod to I might buy some skincare or I might buy some makeup. I don't typically wear a lot of makeup. Um, First and foremost, because I actually don't really know what to do with it. So I'm pretty limited to a bit of eyeliner and mascara most days. But I will have those moments where I think, "Do you know what? Those people in those nice, shiny, glossy magazines, or the friends that I see with all the contouring makeup, look fabulous and their skin looks flawless. And I feel as though maybe I should be buying some of those items. I should be buying some of those things as well to help me to fall into that mold." Now, my older daughter, she's 20 years old at the moment. Her eyes light up when I go shopping with her and I make noises of the fact that I might want to go to Boots or Superdrug to buy some products because in reality, over the last 10 years or so, when I have done that, she ends up with most of the products and the items that I've purchased. She ends up with the eyebrow pencil because I don't know how to use it, I don't know what to do with it, or I put it on and I feel that I just look like some mannequin. I don't actually know what I'm doing with the makeup. So she's really happy. So that's a pattern. And I need to stop myself. Sometimes it's really nice to buy some stuff. Sometimes it's really nice to buy it and then just give it her anyway. But just in terms of noticing those patterns of behavior, it's being truly honest with yourself, taking a look at what your spending habits are, having a look at your credit card statements and your bank statements and looking at what you purchase, keeping the receipts as well and saving them somewhere or making a record somewhere and noticing what you're spending money on, how much you're spending money on certain things. And are you actually then getting the use out of those items when you bought them? What is it that you are fulfilling in yourself by making those purchases? Or are they a genuine need that you genuinely use, you get a lot of joy from? And then in that case, that's very, very different. For me, that's stationery. I journal a lot. So I'm quite happy with my dingbat and my moleskin notebooks because I get a lot of joy out of using them. I like to use Uniball pens because they write really nicely. I like to light a nice candle when I'm journaling as part of the ritual for myself and they get used. So when they end up on my Christmas list, when my husband says to me, "What can I get you for Christmas?" and he rolls his eyes and says, "I bought you that for the last 3 years." That's because I've used them, and I get a lot of joy and enjoyment from them. So that's a little bit different. Looking at whether the purchases are aligned with values and image is very, very different because it requires for us to take a long, hard look at the mirror. So quite often, that's going to be part of the bigger exercise, a longer exercise in order to be able to actually question and interrogate yourself. What are your values as an individual? Are your spending habits in line with those values? And not just spending money either. I think it's really important to acknowledge that in terms of spending, in terms of expenditure, it's about energy as well. It's about how we're spending our time rather than just our finances. who we are spending our time with. So those people that are around us, those individuals that we could call upon for help or for company or for whatever that might be. What would it take for you to be able to sort of do a little bit of a deep dive? So I'm going to come back to that at the end of this episode, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge. I think it's really interesting to notice if you can see for yourself, or if perhaps somebody really close to you notices that you're in a bit of a loop or some sort of cycle with a certain pattern. So there are some signs to look out for, to see if you can identify for yourself that you're in some sort of cycle from a high earning, high spending, feeling completely trapped, and I'm not actually getting anything out of all of this work that I'm doing. Because whether you're employed or self-employed, as a high earner, there's an awful lot of responsibility that comes with that earning tag, that ability to call that money in. That's an awful lot of time that you're perhaps not at home, you're not with your kids, you're not looking after yourself, you're not exercising, you're perhaps not organizing your food as much as you might want to do. So, for each of those choices that we do make when we're high earning, we are losing out on, we have an opportunity cost on other things that we can't do because of that higher level of responsibility. If we're in a senior management position or higher, there are large expectations made on our time, of our expertise. There's a lot of pressure and expectation to be available, perhaps in antisocial hours, or when problems that arise maybe over the weekend or in the evenings or very early in the morning, then somebody needs to be able to carry the book for that. And that quite often falls on the shoulders of those people. So whilst it would be very easy to judge for an individual earning a high salary, well, it's all right for you. You earn plenty of money. But at what cost does that earning capacity come with? So signs that you're in some sort of cycle are that you earn great money, and that you can acknowledge that that number, when you write that number down for your annual salary and you look at it in isolation, taking it out of the conversation, take it out of your thought process, what that money goes towards, but just looking at the amount of money, that's a lot of money, or that's perhaps higher than your parents might have earned, for example, or that's above the average if you were to Google what the average salary was for somebody in the UK. Well, earning a great amount of money, but you don't feel secure. Do you have a buffer, for example, financially? Are you able to say, do you know what, I've had enough of this job, I'm going to resign now because I know I've got a buffer whereby I could perhaps not work for the next 3 to 6 months while I look for something new or reevaluate what I actually want to be spending my time on. Speaking of a buffer, if you've got all of this money coming in, is it just as quickly going all the way out again? So we get to the end of the month, each month, and we're starting at zero every time. We've not got the capacity to be saving or squirreling money away, investing, putting money into pensions, or whatever that might look like for you. Is the money that we're earning going straight back out on car payments, mortgages, school fees, kids clubs, gym memberships, and all of those sorts of things? And I think the most important thing, which is quite often the hardest to notice, it's the easiest to dumb down, it's the easiest to quieten with other habits, is the financial anxiety that we might feel despite the pay packet, despite the apparent illusion or vision of success, of financial security to the outside world. How is it making you feel when you're earning that amount of money? What kind of is it financial anxiety? Is it constant worry? Is it something that's waking you up in the middle of the night because you perhaps feel you've not got your house in order when it comes to the finances, despite earning the money? So it's very, very easy to not deal with making decisions in money. And what I quite often see in marriages is sometimes the women are making decisions in relation to where their money is being spent, but sometimes that can be taken over by a well-meaning or otherwise other half or husband that is making those decisions himself. It might be that to begin with, that was something that you wanted to do. That was an ideal that as part of being in a relationship that you were quite happy to hand the responsibility over because you have enough responsibility of your own. But that in itself can become its own cage, its own trap, because without access and without understanding what costs what, where the money goes, and what needs to be covered each month, we're reducing our choices all of the time. We're reducing the input that we can have into those conversations. So having a handle on what comes in and what goes out of your own income, and also as a joint capacity, if you're in a marriage, is super, super important from an empowerment point of view. And just from it, just knowing it's that ease, it's that peace of mind, it's that reducing of financial anxiety that we're wanting to be able to get to. And that comes with knowledge. So we can worry about how much money we've got in the bank. And if we open the credit card statements and that balance is going up and up and up without ever making a dent, then we'd be right to be worried. That the reasons that we worry is because we don't know. And once we know, we can then make changes. We can then start to make payments. We can start to change the spending that's going on the card with intentional planning around what's happening with there. That if we are not in the know, if we're not aware of what's happening, if we haven't got our finger on the pulse when it comes to our finances, we can't be making intentional decisions. We can't be changing the trajectory of where our career is taking us without us actually having any say in it, and where our financial future is taking us, because we're just on this road and we're being carried along by the tide rather than taking hold of the wheel and changing direction and choosing where we want to be going. So to be able to try and reframe some of these situations, once we start to notice and we have awareness of, I actually don't feel massively in control and the worry is getting to me a little bit more each month, it's important to recognize, first of all, that those feelings are valid and that they are important and that you can do something about them. You can ask questions, you can read up on things, you can access and listen to this podcast, and you can get in touch with me. But in terms of reframing from a mindset point of view, it's very easy to think, well, it's okay, I will just earn more money. And I've fallen into this trap myself when I was in a lot of debt. I started off, it did actually help me at the time because I was fortunate enough to be able to take on additional contracts of work, which once I took control of the spending, once I'd left that financially controlling relationship, and the money wasn't just leaking all over the place, I could actually be really intentional about where that extra income went to. And for me, it went to paying off my debt. But it made a huge difference to be able to know that the money coming in was able to go in that direction. It's not helpful to have more income if that income is already spent before it comes in. So being able to reframe and understand, well, I can earn more money or I can ask for a pay rise, but is that just going to then go straight back into the pot and go towards all the normal spending that we've got going out every month? Is this something that I can do something intentional with to change the direction of something? Whether that's to save more, whether that's to have a little bit more of a buffer, to not worry so much, to maybe negotiate reducing your hours at work, because then we can actually take the time to consider the direction that you want to go in. Ultimately, I think another reframe is that financial freedom doesn't come with earning more money. It doesn't come with taking on extra responsibilities, increasing your hours, taking that promotion. It comes from keeping more of what you earn. It comes from keeping hold of more of the cash that comes into your bank account, your life, that comes as a result of your work, which you can then do something intentional with. It's fine to earn it. If you're spending it just as quickly, then we're no better off. You might as well go and stack shelves in a supermarket, because at least then you know that that money is your own and that's all that you have. But you don't have the same responsibilities when you walk out of your employment premises, wherever that might be. When we're working in a higher responsibility job, then there's a lot more of an expectation on your time, and there's a lot more that you're perhaps unable to leave at the office at the end of the day. There's something that you're then carrying home with you on the drive home, on the train, when you're getting in the shower, while you're getting the children ready for bed or taking them off to their after school activities. So it's affecting our ability to be present. It's affecting our ability to relax, because we need relaxation and the ability to switch off. Financial freedom is created by what you keep, not just by what you earn. So there needs to be a bit of a difference, a gap, or a spread between money in and money out. So in terms of how you can start to take control, how you can start to do something physically and practically to be able to help you in this direction, is to start paying attention with where the money is going. So in terms of practical tips, a lifestyle audit is a really useful thing, and it might be something that you might struggle to do on your own. It might be something that you could perhaps do with a friend. You could perhaps do it with each other, keep each other on task. Make sure you're actually checking in on each other on a weekly or a monthly basis, however that might work out time-wise. Lifestyle audits in terms of what are your top 5 monthly expenses and why. So you can choose to include your mortgage in that, but you can choose to exclude it as well. Maybe it's expenses outside of household, has to have, can't do anything about it. Maybe it's an audit of the finance payments that you're making out, and what is that money going on? When are they ending? And what could you do to plan to make sure that we're not then doing something immediately after those plans are finished to swallow that money up straight away? Coming back to the values piece, this is super, super interesting, and is easier definitely to do with a friend, with somebody, with a coach, for example. Try a values filter when spending. So you need to have some sort of idea of what your values might be, but what is the intention for the purchases that you're making on a regular basis? When you're spending money, does this support the life that I want? Or am I buying for a different purpose, like we mentioned earlier on, out of obligation, out of guilt, out of feeling that we're needing to keep up with the Joneses, for example? Questioning whilst you're walking up and down the aisles of Boots, for example, all of the things that are being thrown in the basket. What is the purpose of it, and how does it align with my values? Super, super important. If you don't already have this, building a spending buffer, even if it is just a few £100s, and it can feel like nothing. Sometimes I work through this exercise with several clients, and sometimes it is just a case of, with intentional checking as a bank account, with writing out of last month, I spent this much in the supermarket, I spent this much on Amazon, I spent this much online, with things that just come on automatic renewed subscriptions. If I stopped all of those things, how much money might I save? Am I actually using all of the things that we've got coming into the household? Sometimes that can be a huge amount of money, and there's no shame in that. It's about making those changes, but quite often it can feel that we can't talk about it because we feel that we've overspent in the past. This is about changing habits for the good, for the future. The more of a differential we can build between money in and money out, the more of a choice we have with what we then do with that buffer later. The more of a chance we have of finding the key to release those golden handcuffs that we talked about right at the beginning of this episode. And the main reason that we want you to do all of that, the main reason that I implore every single person that might be listening to this now is, if you stopped earning today, how long could your current lifestyle continue? I'm going to say that again. If you stopped earning today, how long could your current lifestyle continue? How much have you got in savings? How long would that last if your income stopped coming in because you left a job, because you were removed from your job, because you were too ill to work? And that can be quite a sobering thought for many. So, in closing, what we're wanting to achieve is to look at our patterns, to look at our spending, to look at our values, but also to break the guilt loop. I mean, this isn't about giving you something else to hit yourself over the head with. It's not about restriction. It's about margin and freedom. Margin in terms of money in, money out, and the freedom of choice, the freedom to say no. Because you deserve spaciousness, not just survival. And that's it for today. Join me again next week for the next episode. I can't wait to see you.
Thank you for joining me today on Breaking Financial Chains. Remember, you have the power to transform your relationship with money one step at a time. If this episode helped you, please subscribe and leave a review to help others find their path to financial freedom. I'm Tanya, your financial wing woman, and I'll see you next week.